A dying man looked straight at me and said my full name. Not just my name, the one no stranger should know, and in that moment, my chest tightened. Because my entire life, my mom told me my dad abandoned me when I was 2. She said he chose drugs over me, and I believed her. For 32 years, I believed I wasn't worth staying for. Until the man lying in front of me, dying in my care, took my hand and whispered something that broke everything. "Your mother told me you were dead." And just like that, the life I thought I understood was gone. That shouldn't have been possible. I stood there, staring at him, trying to understand what I had just heard. A dying man had just said my name. Not casually, not like he read it off my badge. He said it like it meant something, like it belonged to him. My dad was supposed to be the man who abandoned me. That was the only version of the story I had ever known. So how could a complete stranger look at me like that and say my name like he'd been carrying it for years? "You're mistaken," I said. The words came out quickly, almost automatic, like something I had trained myself to say when things didn't make sense. But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. There was something about the way he was looking at me. Too focused, too certain. Patients get confused all the time. They mix up faces, they attach meaning where there isn't any. I've seen it hundreds of times, but this didn't feel like that. This felt deliberate. The heart monitor beside him kept its slow, steady rhythm. Beep, beep. Normal. Everything in the room looked normal, but nothing felt normal anymore. I took a small step back. "Say that again." He swallowed, slow and careful, like even that took effort. His lips trembled before he spoke. "Faith." My chest tightened. I hadn't told him my name, not properly. Yes, it was on my badge. But people don't say it like that. Not like they recognize you. Not like they've been waiting for you. "You read it?" I said quickly, nodding toward my badge. "That's normal. It's right there." I needed it to be that simple. I needed it to be explainable. But he shook his head. "No. Just that one word." Quiet, certain. His eyes filled with tears, and I felt something shift inside me. "I know that name," he said. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. Not fear exactly, but something close. I've been saying that name for 32 years. The air seemed to press in around me. 32 years. That wasn't random. That wasn't confusion. That was a timeline. A real one. My mind immediately tried to push back. "This isn't real. This is coincidence. It has to be." "You have the wrong person," I said. This time slower. More controlled. I needed control. But he didn't react like someone who was wrong. He didn't hesitate. Didn't second guess. He just kept looking at me. Like he already knew. "I looked for you," he said. Each word came out carefully, like he didn't have the strength to waste any of them. "For years." Something in my chest dropped, hard. I felt it physically, like my body understood something before my mind was ready to. "No," I said again. But softer now. Because suddenly I wasn't as sure. "My father left," I added. The sentence sounded strange out loud. Like I was repeating something I had memorized. "He chose drugs over us." That was the story. The only story. The one I had lived with my entire life. But the man in front of me didn't react like someone being accused. He didn't look guilty. He didn't look ashamed. He looked broken. "I never used drugs," he said, simple, direct, no emotion in the words themselves. But everything in his face said otherwise. "I never stopped looking for you." The room felt smaller. I became aware of every detail all at once. The faint smell of antiseptic. The soft hum of the lights. The weight of my own breathing. Too fast. Too shallow. This wasn't supposed to happen. None of this was supposed to exist. I took another step back, finally pulling my hand free. He didn't try to stop me this time. His fingers slipped away slowly, like he didn't have the strength to hold on anymore. But his eyes didn't move. Still fixed on me. Still searching. Still certain. I'm gonna check your chart, I said, professional voice, controlled tone, something I could hide behind. I'll be right back. I turned before he could say anything else, because if I stayed another second, I wasn't sure what I would believe. The hallway felt too bright when I stepped out. Too sharp, like everything had been turned up one level higher than normal. I walked quickly toward the nurse's station. My steps didn't feel steady anymore. I noticed that. The slight shake in my hands. The way my fingers didn't fully listen when I tried to still them. Hey? Dana said, glancing up. You okay? Yeah, I answered immediately. Too quickly. Just new patient. She studied me for a second. Not convinced, but she didn't push. I looked down at the chart in front of me. Robert Lawson. The name hit differently now. Not just a name. A connection. Or at least some that felt like one. Lawson. The same name on my badge. The same name I had carried my entire life. It didn't mean anything. It couldn't. Names overlap all the time. That's normal. That's explainable. I flipped through the file. Age, diagnosis, transfer details, nothing unusual, nothing that explained what just happened. No emergency contact, no history that connected him to me. Just paper, just facts, just information. But it didn't feel like enough. Did he say anything when he came in? I asked. Dana shook her head. No, barely spoke. Why? I hesitated. Just for a second. Then I shook my head. Nothing. Just seemed a little confused. That was the easiest explanation. The safest one. She nodded. Yeah, that happens. I knew. Of course I knew. I'd seen it too many times to count. But this didn't feel like confusion. It felt like something else. Something I couldn't explain. I closed the file and set it down. But my eyes drifted back toward the hallway. Room 12B. Door slightly open. Light still on. He was still there, waiting. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I couldn't immediately control. Not fear, not panic. But something deeper. Something heavier. Because if what he said wasn't random, then it meant one thing. The story I had believed my entire life might not be true. And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. This wasn't confusion anymore. That was the first thought that stayed with me as I stepped out into the hallway. Not maybe, not coincidence. Something about what just happened in that room was real, and that was exactly what made it dangerous. I didn't go far. Just enough distance to breathe. The fluorescent lights felt harsher than usual, buzzing faintly overhead. The hallway looked the same as it always did. Clean, quiet, controlled. But I didn't feel controlled anymore. I've been saying your name for 32 years. That line wouldn't let go. People don't say things like that by accident. They don't say it with that kind of certainty. I stood there for a moment, staring down at my hands. They weren't steady. That bothered me. I've dealt with death. With grief. With families falling apart in real time. I don't get shaken easily. So why was this different? Hey, you okay? Dana's voice pulled me back. I looked up quickly. Yeah, just new admission. She gave me a look, half concern, half curiosity, but didn't press. Let me know if you need help, she said, turning back to her chart. I nodded. Even though I already knew this wasn't something anyone else could help with. I glanced down at the file in my hand. Robert Lawson. The name hit differently now, not just a name anymore, a pattern, a coincidence that didn't feel like one. Lawson, the same name on my badge, the same name I had carried my entire life. I exhaled slowly and closed the file. No, names overlap all the time, that's normal. That doesn't mean anything. I repeated that in my head like it was enough to settle this. It wasn't. I turned back toward the hallway. Room 20B sat at the far end. Door slightly open, light still on. He was still there waiting. That thought hit harder than I expected. Not resting. Waiting. For me. I don't know why, but that made my chest tighten. I pushed the door open again. Slowly this time, he hadn't moved much, still lying there, thinner than anyone should be, skin pale against the white sheets. But his eyes were exactly the same. Focused, locked. "You came back?" he said. Not surprised, not relieved, just expected. I stepped inside and kept my tone steady. "I need to check your vitals, routine, structure, something I could hold on to." He didn't argue, just watched me as I moved closer. I wrapped the cuff around his arm, focusing on the numbers, pressure, pulse, readings, things that don't lie, but I could feel it again. That weight. Not casual. Not random, like he was studying me. "You get quiet when something doesn't make sense," he said. I froze, not visibly. Everything paused. "What?" I asked, without looking up. "You did that when you were little too," he continued. "I remember." That word again. Remember. It landed differently this time. He wasn't guessing. He wasn't trying to figure things out. He was speaking like he already knew. I finished writing the numbers and set the pen down, slowly. Then I looked at him. Directly. "What do you think is happening right now?" I asked. No softness this time. No distraction. Just a straight question. He didn't answer immediately. His breathing was shallow, uneven, but his eyes stayed sharp. "I think," he said carefully, "you're exactly where I've been trying to find you." That pressure came back. Stronger. I took a step back. "That's not possible," I said, "because if it was, then everything else wasn't." "I know enough," he replied. No hesitation. "I know your name. I know your face." He swallowed. "I've seen it every day for 32 years. That didn't sound dramatic. That's what made it worse. It sounded lived. I shook my head slightly, trying to reset, trying to pull this back into something I could control. "This isn't real," I said quietly. But even to me, it didn't sound convincing anymore. He shifted slightly, reaching toward the chair beside him. The movement looked small, but I could tell it took effort. There was a bag there, old, worn down at the edges, the kind of bag that's been carried for years, not days. "Open it," he said. I didn't move. "Sir, please." That stopped me. Not because it was loud, but because it wasn't. There was no force behind it. No pressure. Just something real. Need. Every instinct I had told me not to engage. To keep this professional, contained. Safe. But something else, something I couldn't explain, pushed me forward. I stepped toward the chair and picked up the bag. It was heavier than I expected, not full of clothes, not light. There was weight to it. Real weight. I placed it on the bed and unzipped it slowly. Inside, a folder, old. Edges softened from years of handling. Corners bent. The surface worn in a way that only happens when something is opened over and over again. I stared at it for a second. My hand didn't move right away. Because suddenly, I wasn't sure I wanted to know what was inside. "Open it," he said again. Softer this time. I took a breath. Then I did. The first page stopped everything. Birth certificate official. Stamped. Real. My eyes moved automatically. Name. Date. Place of birth. Then, I froze. My fingers tightened around the paper, because there, written clearly, was my name, Faith Lawson. And just below it, Father Robert Lawson. My heart dropped. Not fast, not sudden, heavy, like something sinking. "No," I whispered. That wasn't denial anymore. That was shock. That's not possible. Because if that was real, then something else wasn't. I flipped the page faster now. Looking for something wrong, something fake, something I could hold on to. But there was more. Receipts, reports, private investigator files. Different locations, all tracking one thing. Faith Lawson. My hands weren't steady anymore. Not at all. This wasn't confusion anymore. This was evidence. "You kept all this," I said, my voice barely holding together. "For you," he answered. Simple. No explanation needed. I looked at him again. Really looked this time, trying to match the man in front of me, with the name on that paper. With the story I had lived my entire life by, but they didn't fit, they couldn't fit. Because if they did, then one truth became impossible to ignore. The story I had believed for 32 years was wrong, and I didn't know what to do with that. Not yet. I didn't sleep that morning. Not even for a minute. I went home after my shift, sat on the edge of my bed, and stared at the folder in my hands like it might change if I looked at it long enough. It didn't. The papers were still there. The name was still there. A Father Robert Lawson. Every time I read it, the same thought came back. If this is true, then everything else isn't. And that was the part I couldn't process. Not yet, because my entire life had been built around one simple truth. My father left. That story wasn't just something I knew. It was something I became. The reason I stayed when others walked away. The reason I chose this job. The reason I learned how to sit with people who were dying and not run from it. Because I knew what it felt like to be left behind. Or at least, I thought I did. I picked up my phone, stared at her name, Mom. My thumb hovered over the screen longer than it should have. Then I pressed call. She answered on the second ring. Faith, everything okay? Her voice was normal, warm, familiar, like nothing in the world had changed. That almost made it worse. I need to ask you something, I said. I kept my voice calm, even. The way I talk to patients' families when something serious is coming, a pause. Not long, but noticeable. What is it? What was my father's full name? Silence. Not complete silence. I could hear something faint on her end, maybe the TV, maybe movement. That was the first crack. My father? I repeated. What was his name? She exhaled slowly. Faith. Why are you asking about that? She didn't answer the question. She redirected. That was the second crack. I just need the name, I said. Another pause. Then, Robert something. My chest tightened. You don't remember? I asked. Her voice sharpened slightly. I don't keep track of men who walk out on their families. There it was, the story. The same one, clean, simple, practiced. But now, it didn't feel solid anymore. It felt rehearsed. I closed my eyes for a second, then I said it. Direct. Robert Lawson. Silence again. Longer this time. I could hear her breathing now. Not steady, not calm. Tight, controlled. Where did you hear that? She asked. Not that's wrong. Not that's impossible. Just, where did you hear that? That was the third crack. I didn't hear it, I said. I read it. What do you mean you read it? Her tone changed. Less warmth now. More edge. I opened the folder again, even though I didn't need to. The words were already burned into my memory. I read a birth certificate, I said, and investigator reports. And letters. Silence. Heavy this time. Like something had shifted on her end of the line. Faith, she said slowly. Who have you been talking to? Not concern, not confusion. Control. That was new. I met someone, I said. I kept it simple. I wanted to hear what she would say without giving her too much to work with. That man, she said immediately, sharp, certain. Whatever he told you, it's not true. She didn't ask who. She didn't ask where. She knew. That was the moment everything inside me went still. Because she wasn't guessing. She already understood the situation, which meant she had something to protect. He's in my hospice, I said. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I let that sit for a second. He's dying. Her response came fast. Too fast. That's exactly the kind of situation people take advantage of, she said. Dying men say things. They confuse people. They manipulate emotions. Her voice was steady now, confident. Like she had found her footing again. Like she had stepped back into a role she knew how to play. I leaned back slightly, gripping the edge of the bed. He has documents, I said. That stopped her. I felt it. Even through the phone. "What kind of documents?" she asked. "Carefully. Too carefully. Ones that don't match your story." Then, a shift, subtle, but clear. "Faith," she said, softer now, "you don't understand what that man is capable of." There it was, new angle. Not denial. Not explanation, fear. "He was dangerous," she continued. "I protected you from him." Protected, that word hit differently now. Before. Now. It felt like something else. Like justification. "If he was dangerous," I said slowly, "why isn't there a single record of it?" No answer. Just breathing. I pressed further. "Why are there reports of him looking for me for 32 years? Still nothing." "That's not what dangerous men do." Her tone changed again. Less controlled. "You don't know what you're talking about," she snapped. I lived it. There it was. Emotion. Real or not. It was stronger now. "I lived it too," I said quietly. And that was true. But now I wasn't sure whose version I had lived. Another pause. Long. Then. Lower. Colder. "If you keep digging into this," she said, "you're going to regret it." I didn't react right away. Because that sentence wasn't emotional. It wasn't defensive. It was controlled. Measured. A warning. "You're getting involved with a patient," she continued. "Do you understand how that looks?" My chest tightened. "That's not what this is," I said. "Isn't it?" she replied. "You're emotionally involved. You're questioning your judgment. If the hospital finds out, what do you think happens?" There it was. Not just control, pressure, professional pressure, calculated. "I can make one call," she said quietly. "One call to the right person, and they'll pull you off that case." My grip tightened on the phone. This wasn't about truth anymore. This was about control. "Are you threatening my job?" I asked. "I'm protecting you," she said immediately. But it didn't sound like protection. It sounded like strategy. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady myself, trying to see clearly. "Then answer me one thing," I said. "Did you ever tell him I was dead?" Silence. No redirect, no explanation, no anger. Just silence. And that was the loudest answer she had given so far. Because I already knew. I just needed to hear it. "Did you tell him that?" I asked again. Still, nothing. Then finally, a quiet breath, and a sentence that didn't deny anything. "I did what I had to do." That was it. No apology, no explanation, just justification. Something inside me shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, just clear. Because that sentence told me everything I needed to know. I pulled the phone away slightly, staring at it for a second. Then I brought it back. "I'm going to see him," I said. Her voice came back quickly. "Faith, I'm going to hear the truth," I continued. "And this time I'm not walking away from it." I ended the call before she could say anything else. The room felt different now. Quieter. But clearer. The folder was still in my lap. The papers still real. The name still there. And now, so was the truth. Not complete, not fully understood. But enough. Enough to know one thing for certain. The story I had lived my entire life by was starting to fall apart, and I wasn't going to stop it. Not anymore. I didn't go home after that call. I sat in my car for a long time. Engine off. Hands still on the wheel, just thinking. Or trying to. Because every time I tried to organize what I knew, another piece didn't fit. My mother didn't deny it. The documents were real. And a dying man had spent 32 years looking for me. That wasn't confusion. That wasn't coincidence. That was a pattern. And patterns don't lie. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder again. The paper felt heavier now. Not physically, but because I understood what it meant. This wasn't just proof. This was history, and someone had been hiding it. I flipped through the pages slowly this time. Not searching. Reading, understanding, dates, locations, private investigator receipts, Different cities, different years, same purpose. Find Faith Lawson. My chest tightened again. But this time, it wasn't confusion, it was something else. Realization. I reached the last page. There was a number written in pencil, faded slightly. Like it had been handled too many times. I stared at it for a moment. Then I picked up my phone, dialed. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then, careful, measured. Is this Thomas Harland? I asked a pause. Yes. Who's this? My name is Faith Lawson. Silence. Not sure, not uncertain. Heavy, like something had just stopped on the other end. Then, a breath, sharp, broken. Say that again. My name is Faith Lawson. Another silence. Longer this time, and then, I heard it. A man trying to hold himself together. Faith, he whispered. You're alive. That word hit differently. Alive, like it had been in question all this time. I think I need to talk to you, I said. You do? He replied immediately. No hesitation, no doubt. I've been waiting for this call for 32 years. That made my grip tighten on the phone. Another person, another timeline, another confirmation. I have documents, I said. From him. I know exactly what you have, Thomas said. And I have the rest. That stopped me. The rest, I asked. Yes, he said. Everything your father couldn't carry with him. My chest tightened again. How much is everything? I asked. There was a small pause. Then, enough to prove he never abandoned you, clear, direct, final. I leaned back in my seat, closed my eyes for a second. Because this was what I needed. Not emotion, not memory proof. Where are you? He asked. Columbus. I'm in Wheeling, he said. I hesitated, only for a second. Then, when? Today. No delay, no reschedule, no hesitation. Like this moment had already been decided. I'll send you a location, he added. Bring everything you have. The call ended. And for the first time since this started, I felt something shift in a different direction. Not confusion, not fear. Movement. I started the car. The drive didn't feel long, even though it should have. My mind was too busy replaying everything. My mother's voice. I did what I had to do. Ra never stopped looking, and now, Thomas. I have the rest. 3 pieces. 3 versions. Only one could be true. Or maybe all of them were. Just in different ways. The diner sat just off the highway. Small, neutral. The kind of place people pass without noticing. Which is probably why he chose it. I walked in and scanned the room. There weren't many people. A couple in the corner. A man at the counter, and then, him, older, gray hair, suit, but not new, worn in, like it had been used for years. He stood when he saw me, slowly, like he wasn't sure if this was real. You look like him, he said. That was the first thing. Not hello, not confirmation. Just that. I didn't respond right away, because I didn't know how. He said gently. I did. He placed a file on the table between us, thicker than the one I had. Organized. Labeled. Structured. This is everything, he said. I didn't open it immediately. What exactly is everything? I asked. He looked at me for a moment, like he was deciding how to say it. Then, proof that your father never abandoned you. The same sentence again, but heavier this time, because now, it wasn't just words. I opened the first section, official documents, missing person report, filed, stamped. Real. My name. My age. The year. Hey, filed that 2 weeks after you disappeared, Thomas said. Disappeared? I repeated. Wes. Not left. Not taken. Disappeared. That word changed everything. He reported you missing. Thomas continued. And he didn't stop. I flipped to the next section. Correspondence, police departments, hospitals, different states, all the same question. Have you seen this child? I swallowed, hard. This isn't what someone does if they walk away, Thomas said quietly. I didn't respond. Because I already knew that. I turned another page, photos. Age, progressed images, different versions of me, at 5'10", at 15, all guesses, all attempts, all effort. I felt something tighten in my chest again. But this time, it wasn't confusion. It was grief. For something I never even knew I lost. He updated those every year, Thomas said, even when people told him to stop. I closed the file halfway. Not fully. Just enough to pause. Why didn't anyone stop her? I asked. That question had been building. Since the call. Since the silence. Since everything. Thomas leaned back slightly. He tried, he said. But your mother was careful. How? She crossed state lines, he explained. Changed contact information. Kept moving. I stared at the table. That's not illegal, I said. Not by itself, he replied. Not back then. Not the way it should have been. There was a pause. Then he added something that changed everything again. There's one more thing. I looked up. He reached into the file and pulled out a separate document. Placed it in front of me carefully. This is a notarized copy, he said. Off a letter your mother wrote in 1994. My heart slowed. Not sped up, slowed. Because something inside me already knew what this was. I picked it up. The handwriting was familiar. Too familiar I had seen it on birthday cards. On everything. And the words were clear. I'm leaving and taking Faith. I told everyone she died. It's easier this way. I stopped reading. Because I didn't need to continue. The rest didn't matter. That sentence was enough. The room felt quiet again, but not empty, heavy, full, real. That's her handwriting, Thomas said softly. I've verified it. I nodded once. Slow, because there was no point denying it, no point questioning it. This wasn't doubt anymore. This was truth, clear, documented, undeniable. I placed the paper back down carefully, like it deserved that much respect. Or maybe, like I did, I sat there for a moment. Not speaking, not reacting, just understanding. Because now, there was no version of the story left to hide behind. Only one thing remained. The truth. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of it. I didn't go home after meeting Thomas. I drove straight back to the hospice. The folder sat on the passenger seat beside me, open, not hidden anymore. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to protect the story I grew up with. I was trying to understand the one I never got. The parking lot was quieter than usual. Late afternoon, the kind of light that feels softer but heavier at the same time. Like the day already knows how it's going to end, I sat in the car for a moment before getting out. Not because I was unsure, but because I knew. Once I walked back into that room, there was no going back to who I was before. I grabbed the folder and stepped inside. The hallway felt familiar again, but I didn't. Room Wo Bi, door slightly open. Same as before. I pushed it gently. He was a weaker. That was the first thing I noticed. His face looked thinner, his breathing slower. Like something inside him was already beginning to let go. But when he saw me, his eyes changed. Not stronger but brighter. Like recognition. Like relief. You came back, he said. His voice was softer now, more effort behind each word. I nodded and walked closer. I went to see someone, I said. I placed the folder on the table beside his bed. Thomas Harland. That name alone shifted something in his expression. A small exhale, almost like tension leaving his body. He kept everything, didn't he? He asked. Yes. I pulled the chair closer and sat down, for the first time not as a nurse, as something else. Something I wasn't used to yet. He showed me the reports, I said. The missing person file, the letters, everything. He closed his eyes for a second, not in pain, in recognition. I didn't know if you'd ever see those, he said quietly. I hoped, but hoping gets harder after a while. I didn't know what to say to that. Because what do you say to someone who spent decades hoping for something you didn't even know existed? I looked at his hands. Rough. worn, collused. Hands that had built things. Hands that had worked. Hands that had searched. "You never stopped," I said. It wasn't a question. He shook his head slowly. "Final. People told me to," he added. "Friends, family, even Thomas at one point." A small pause, but I couldn't. I leaned back slightly. Why? That word came out before I could stop it. Not sharp. Not demanding. Just honest. Because I needed to understand. He looked at me for a long moment. Then, he gave the kind of answer that doesn't sound rehearsed. Doesn't sound dramatic. Just real. "Because you were mine," he said. That was it. No speech. No explanation. Just that. And somehow, that hit harder than anything else I had read or heard. I swallowed hard. Because something in my chest tightened in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. "You were too," he continued. "You used to sit on my shoulders when I worked in the shop." A small smile touched his face. "You'd grab my hair and refuse to let go." I didn't remember that. Not even a trace. But the way he said it made it feel real. "You hated loud noises," he added. "Every time I used the saw, you'd cover your ears and glare at me like I was doing it on purpose." I let out a small breath. Not quite a laugh, but close. That image. It didn't feel like something made up. It felt lived. "You used to fall asleep in my arms," he said. "Every night. Same way." His voice slowed slightly. More effort now. I'd sit on the couch and just hold you there. The room felt quieter. Not empty. Full. Heavy with things I had never known. "I thought I lost all of that," he said. "Every single part of it." I looked down at my hands. Then back at him. "You didn't," I said. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't fully true. Because he had lost it. 32 years of it. And so had I. I reached into the folder and pulled out one of the letters. Worn soft at the edges. I unfolded it carefully. "This one is from when I was 7, I said. I looked at him. "Do you want me to read it?" He nodded. Slow. I took a breath. Then I read, "Dear Faith, I don't know where you are today, but I hope you're safe. I built you a small table this week. I keep thinking maybe one day you'll sit at it." My voice faltered slightly, not because I couldn't read, but because I could feel what was behind the words now. Not just ink. Not just paper. Years of waiting. Years of not knowing. I finished the letter and folded it again. Carefully. Like it mattered. Because it did. "I kept them all," he said. "For every birthday." I nodded. "I know." A small silence settled between us. Not uncomfortable. Just real. Then I noticed something. His breathing. It had changed. Subtle. But different. Slower, more spaced out. I've seen it before. Too many times. I leaned forward slightly. "You tired?" I asked. He gave a faint smile. "More than yesterday." Honest. No hiding it. That hit harder than anything else. Because time wasn't something we had anymore. Not much of it. "I should have been there," he said suddenly. "For everything?" I shook my head immediately. "No." That word came out stronger than I expected. "You tried," I said, "and I know that now. That mattered. More than anything." He looked at me again, carefully, like he was trying to memorize something. "Say it again," he said quietly. I frowned slightly. "What?" "My name," he said. "My name as your father." That moment, it shouldn't have been difficult. But it was. Because I had never said it before, not once. Not to anyone. I hesitated just for a second. Then, "Dad," the word felt unfamiliar, but not wrong. His eyes closed. Not fully. Just enough. Like he was holding on to it. "I just needed to hear that once," he said, soft. Almost gone. I sat there, holding his hand now, not as a nurse, not as someone doing their job, but as something I had never been allowed to be before. His daughter. And for the first time in my life, that felt real, even if it had come too late. I didn't leave his side for long after that. Not that day. Not after everything I had just heard. Something had shifted inside me. Quietly. but permanently. I wasn't just visiting anymore. I wasn't just trying to understand. I was staying. Because for the first time in my life, I knew exactly where I was supposed to be. The next morning I walked into the hospice earlier than usual. Coffee in one hand, the folder in my bag. My steps felt different. More certain, like I wasn't avoiding anything anymore. But the moment I stepped inside, I felt it. That subtle change in the air. The kind you don't notice unless you've worked in the same place long enough. Something wasn't normal. Faith. Karen's voice called from her office. "Can you come in for a minute?" I stopped, just for a second. Then nodded. "Yeah." Her tone wasn't casual, not urgent either, controlled. That same word again. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. Karen sat at her desk, hands folded, not typing, not distracted, waiting. That wasn't a good sign. "Have a seat," she said. I did. My coffee sat untouched in my hand. "There's been a complaint," she said. Direct, no build-up. I didn't react right away, because something in me already knew where this was going. "A complaint," I repeated. She nodded. "From someone identifying themselves as a family member of one of our patients." My grip tightened slightly on the cup. I didn't need her to say the name. I already knew. "What kind of complaint?" I asked. She leaned back slightly. Measured. "They're claiming that you've become emotionally involved with a patient, to the point where your professional judgment may be compromised." There it was. Not truth framing. I exhaled slowly. "Which patient?" I asked, even though I knew. She held my gaze. "Robert Lawson." Hearing his name in that tone, formal, clinical, felt wrong. "He's my father." I said. The words came out calm, clear, final. Karen's expression shifted, just slightly surprised, but not shocked. "I assumed there might be a personal connection," she said. "But you understand the policy." I nodded. Of course I did. "If there's a confirmed familial relationship, you can't remain assigned to his care," she continued. "That's standard procedure." "I know," I said, and I did. I had followed that rule myself. But this wasn't just policy. This was timing. "She called you, didn't she?" I asked. Karen didn't answer directly, but she didn't need to. "She was very insistent," Karen said instead, "about protecting the patient from potential emotional distress." That almost made me laugh. Almost. But nothing about this was funny. "She's trying to keep me away from him," I said. Karen didn't respond. Because technically, it didn't matter why. Policy was policy. "I'm not removing you from the facility," she said carefully. "But I do have to reassign his care." There it was, the line, clear, unavoidable. I nodded once, slow, controlled. "Because reacting wouldn't change anything. I'll step back from his medical care," I said. "But I'll still visit him. A's family." Karen considered that, then nodded. "That's allowed." A small pause. Then she added, "Just be careful, Faith." Coffee still untouched. "I will." But I already knew. This wasn't over. Dana was waiting outside when I stepped out. "What happened?" she asked immediately. I didn't stop walking. "They reassigned me." Her face tightened. "That was fast." "Yeah." We both knew what that meant. "Your mom?" she asked. I nodded. Dana let out a breath. Of course she did. We walked in silence for a few seconds. Then, "She's not done," Dana said. Not a question, a statement. I shook my head. No. Because I could feel it. This wasn't just about keeping me away from him. This was about control, and she was losing it. I signed in later that afternoon, not as staff, as family. That felt strange. Unfamiliar. But also, right. When I walked into his room, he looked up immediately, like he had been watching the door again. "You're here," he said, soft, relieved. I nodded and pulled the chair closer. "They reassigned me," I said. No point hiding it. His expression changed, slightly. "What happened?" he asked. My mother, I replied. That was enough. He understood. She always finds a way, he said quietly. There was no anger in his voice, just recognition. Like this wasn't new, like he had seen this before. That doesn't matter, I said. I'm still here. I reached for his hand. This time. I'm not going anywhere. He studied my face for a moment, like he was checking if I meant it. Then, a small nod. I believe you. That mattered more than anything else. That night, my phone rang again. Her name. Mom. I let it ring twice. Then answered. You went behind my back, she said immediately. No greeting, no softness, just accusation. I went to find the truth, I replied. You're putting yourself in a dangerous position, she said. That word again, dangerous. Different tone this time, less emotional, more calculated. He's dying. A pause, then. He's manipulating you. Flat, direct. No, I said. You're losing control. Silence. Sharp. Then her voice dropped. Lower, colder. If you keep pushing this, she said, you're going to lose more than your job. That made me pause. Not because I was afraid, but because of how deliberate it sounded. What does that mean? I asked. Another pause. Then. I built your life, she said. Don't forget that. Not directly. But it carried weight. History. Control. I exhaled slowly. No, I said quietly. You built a story. Silence. He told me the truth. I continued. Heard. Now I've seen it. Her breathing shifted. Faster now. Less controlled. You don't understand what I did for you, she said. I understand exactly what you did, I replied, and that was the difference now. Before, doubted, pulled back. Now I didn't. I'm not stepping away from him, I said. Final, clear. If you try to stop me again. I paused, not for effect, for certainty. It won't work. Another silence. Long, then. This isn't over, she said. I nodded slightly. I know. I ended the call. I sat there for a moment after. Phone still in my hand. Not shaking. Not unsure. Just steady. Because now everything was clear. This wasn't just about the past anymore. This was about what happens next. And for the first time, I wasn't waiting for permission. I didn't plan to expose her. Not at first. That's something I need to be clear about. Because people like to believe these moments are calculated. That there's a speech. A plan. A perfect line waiting at the right time. But that's not how this started. It started with something much simpler. I just couldn't stay quiet anymore. The invitation came the next morning. I almost ignored it. It was sitting in my inbox. Subject line clean and harmless. Celebrating 30 years of service, Connie Petton. My chest tightened the moment I read her name. I opened it anyway. A church event Saturday evening, full program, guest speakers, community recognition. There was even a slideshow mentioned. A tribute to her years as a devoted single mother and community leader. I stared at that line longer than I should have. Devoted single mother, that was the story. The same one. The one she had told everyone. The one I had believed. The one that had shaped everything. And now I knew it wasn't true, not even close. I locked my phone and set it down on the table. But the words didn't leave. They stayed, echoing. Devoted single mother. I let out a slow breath. Because suddenly, this wasn't just personal anymore. This was public, and that changed everything. I went to see him that afternoon. Room 12B, same door, same light, but less time. That's what it felt like now, less time. He was awake when I walked in. But weaker again. But I could see it. The way his chest rose slower. The way his hands didn't move as easily. The way his voice took more effort. You're here, he said. I nodded and pulled the chair closer. I got something this morning, I said. I didn't sit right away. I needed him to hear it first. What? He asked. A church event, I said. I watched his expression carefully. community award. For my mother, that was enough. Something in his face shifted. Not surprise, not confusion, recognition. She always cared about how people saw her, he said quietly. I sat down. They're celebrating her, I continued. For raising me alone. Silence. Heavy. Real. He looked down at his hands, then back at me. Are you going? He asked. I didn't answer immediately, because that question was bigger than it sounded. I don't know, I said, and that was the truth. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Stay here. Stay in this room. Where things were finally real. Where nothing had to be explained. But another part, the part that had been growing louder every day, knew something else. This couldn't stay hidden. She's going to stand there, I said slowly. Aren't tell the same story. He didn't interrupt. Didn't correct me. He just listened, like he already knew where this was going. And people are going to believe her, I added. Because they always had. Because I had. For 32 years I leaned forward slightly, resting my arms on my knees. I sat in that room while she told me you left, I said. Over and over again. My voice didn't break, it didn't rise. But it changed, subtly, because now I knew the difference between truth and performance. And now I know that wasn't true, I said. I looked at him directly. And I don't know how to sit there again and say nothing. That was it. Not anger, not revenge. Just truth. He watched me for a long moment. Then, a small nod. You don't have to stay quiet, he said, simple. No pressure, no expectation, just permission. That mattered more than anything else. Because for most of my life, I didn't even know I had that choice. I stayed with him for a while after that, not talking much, just sitting. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything, but even in the silence, I could feel it. Time. Moving, slipping. The nurse in me recognized it. The daughter in me didn't want to. You should go, he said after a while. I looked at him. What? Not here, he clarified. To that event. I shook my head slightly. I don't want to leave you. That came out before I could stop it. And it was true. But he smiled faintly. You're not leaving, he said. You're doing something you should have been allowed to do a long time. I swallowed. Because that landed. Hard. I might not get another chance to say it, he added. Soft. Careful. You deserve to be heard. The room felt quieter after that. Not empty. Just certain. Because now, this wasn't a question anymore. It was a decision. That night, I sat at my kitchen table. The folder in front of me. Open. Not hidden anymore. The letter on top. I told everyone she died. I read it again. Not for confirmation. For clarity. Because every word mattered now. Every detail. Every line. This wasn't just something I knew. This was something I could prove. My phone buzzed. You going? She asked. Straight to the point. I think I have to, I said. A pause. Then don't go unprepared. That made me look down at the folder again. At the documents. At the truth. I'm not gonna make a scene, I said. I know, she replied. But you're not going to sit there quietly either. She wasn't wrong. Because something inside me had already changed. I'm not doing this to hurt her, I said. More to myself than to her. I know, Dana said. You're doing it because it's true. Saturday evening. I stood outside the church. The building looked exactly the same as it always had. Clean, bright, welcoming. The kind of place where people go to feel safe. The banner near the entrance read, celebrating Connie Petton, 30 years of dedication. I stared at it for a moment. Then I looked down at the folder in my hands. Not shaking, not unsure, just steady, because for the first time, I wasn't carrying a story someone gave me. I was carrying the truth, and she had built a stage for it. I walked inside. The room was already full. Rows of chairs, low voices. Soft music playing from a speaker near the front. Everything about it felt organized, controlled. Like every detail had been planned, I stepped inside and paused for half a second. Not because I was unsure, because I needed to see it clearly. The banner stretched across the front wall, celebrating Connie Payton, 30 years of dedication. I read it once, then again. Then I walked in. People noticed me, a few smiles, a few nods. Someone whispered my name. I didn't stop, I didn't respond. I moved down the aisle and took a seat near the front, close enough to see her. She was already there, standing near the podium, talking to a group of people like nothing had changed. Like the last few days didn't exist. Like the truth wasn't sitting in my hands. One speaker, then another, stories about her work, her kindness, her strength. Each one polished, each one clean, each one missing something. Then they called her name. Applause filled the room. She walked up slowly, confident, steady, exactly the way she always did in public. She adjusted the microphone, looked out at the room. Then she started. When my daughter was 2, a few people leaned forward. I didn't move. I was left to raise her alone. There it was. No hesitation, no pause. Just the same story. Like it had never been questioned. I had no one, she continued. No support. No help. Heads nodded. People listening. Believing. Her father chose to walk away. The sentence landed clean, simple, effective. A complete lie. I stood up. Not fast, not slow, just deliberate. The chair behind me made a small sound as it moved. That was enough. People turned. I walked forward. Every step clear. No rush. No hesitation. She saw me coming. Her expression changed, not fully, but enough. A flicker. Gone almost immediately, but I saw it. Faith, she said quietly, leaning slightly toward the mic. What are you doing? I didn't answer her. I stepped beside the podium, reached for the microphone. She didn't stop me. She couldn't. Not without making it obvious. I turned to the room, faces everywhere, waiting, confused, curious. My father didn't abandon me. No build-up, no speech, just that. The room shifted. You could feel it. Not loud, not chaotic, just different. Faith. Let me finish. Still calm. Still controlled, but firmer now. I opened the folder. Didn't rush it. Didn't dramatize it. I believed that story for 32 years, I said. That he left. A few people looked at her. Then back at me, but that's not what happened. I lifted the first document. A copy, clear, visible. He reported me missing. Silence. He contacted police across multiple states. A man in the second row leaned forward. He hired investigators. I placed the papers on the podium. Flat. Visible, not hidden. People don't do that when they walk away. That line stayed in the air. Because it made sense. She stepped in again. He's confused, she said quickly. A dying man. He's not confused. I didn't raise my voice. But I didn't step back either. I picked up the last paper, the letter. This was written in 1994. I said, my mother's handwriting. Now, they were listening. Really listening. I didn't rush. Didn't pause for effect. Just read. I'm leaving and taking Faith. Don't come looking. I told everyone she died. It's easier this way. No one moved. No one spoke. I lowered the paper, looked at her. Not angry. Not emotional. Just certain. That's your handwriting. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out, closed it again. Someone in the back shifted. A chair creaked. Another voice, low, unsure. What? That was all it took. The room started to change. People weren't looking at me anymore. They were looking at her. Trying to understand. Trying to reconcile what they just heard. This isn't about embarrassing anyone, I said. Still calm. Still steady. But a man is dying 20 minutes from here. I paused. Not for effect, because it mattered. And he spent his entire life looking for me. That landed hard. She stepped back slightly, not by choice, instinct. He didn't leave, I said. He was told I was dead. A woman near the aisle covered her mouth. Another person shook their head slowly. I closed the folder. Didn't slam it, didn't emphasize it. I'm not here to argue, I said. I'm here because it's the truth. No shouting, no chaos, no dramatic ending. Just silence. And in that silence, everything changed. I stepped away from the podium. Didn't wait. Didn't look back. As I walked down the aisle, I could feel it behind me. Not noise. Not yet. Confusion. Doubt. Cracks forming. And for the first time, the story didn't belong to her anymore. No one stopped me. That's what I remember most. Not the silence. Not the faces. The fact that no one tried to stop me. I pushed the door open and stepped outside. Cool air hit my face. Sharp. Real. For a second I just stood there. Breathing. Not fast. Not slow. Just steady. Because everything that had been building for 32 years had just ended in a few minutes. Behind me, the door opened. Voices spilled out, low at first. Then louder. Confused. Uncertain. People trying to understand what they had just seen. I didn't turn around. Because I already knew. Nothing inside that room would be the same again. My phone buzzed in my hand. Dana. I answered. That's done, I said. No explanation, no detail, just that. There was a pause on the other end. Then, are you okay? I looked out at the empty parking lot. At the cars. At the stillness. I said. And for the first time, that wasn't a guess. I got in my car but didn't start it, just sat there. Hands resting on the wheel. The folder on the passenger seat closed now. Not heavy anymore. The door to the church opened again, faster this time. Footsteps. I didn't have to look. I knew who it was. Faith. Her voice. Closer now. Different. Not controlled, not calm. I stepped out of the car and turned. She was standing a few feet away. Breathing hard, eyes wide. Like she had just lost something she couldn't get back. What did you do? She said. Not loud, but tight. I told the truth, I replied. Her head shook immediately. No, she said. No, you humiliated me. I didn't react. Didn't argue because this was exactly what I expected. I didn't say anything that wasn't real, I said. You had no right, she snapped. Do you understand what you just destroyed? That word. Destroyed. I took a small step forward, not aggressive, just closer. You destroyed it, I said. 32 years ago. She stopped. Just for a second. But it was enough. You don't understand why I did it, she said. Her voice shifted again. Not anger. Not yet. Something else. I understand exactly what you did, I replied. You made a decision. Her eyes filled slightly. But the tears didn't fall. I was trying to protect you, she said. From what? I asked. She hesitated. That was new. From him, she said finally. Weak. Uncertain. He was never dangerous, I said. You just needed him gone. That hit. Because this time, she didn't have an answer ready. She said, her voice rising slightly now. You think I had choices? Yes, I said, calm. Direct? You did. Silence. I chose differently. I added. That was the difference now. For years, she controlled the narrative, the explanations, the justifications. Now, none of it worked. You've turned everyone against me, she said. Quieter now. More tired. I shook my head. No. They heard the truth, I said. What they do with it, that's not on me. The door behind her opened again. 2 people stepped out. Stopped when they saw us. Watch. Didn't speak. Of course she did. She always noticed who was watching. Her posture changed slightly. Back straight. Face tighter. Trying to regain something. You think this is over, she said, lower now. Controlled again. I met her eyes. It is? I said. She studied my face. Searching. Looking for hesitation. Anything. She didn't find it. Then don't come back, she said. That landed. But not the way she expected. I'm not leaving anything, I replied. A pause. I'm just not living inside your version anymore. That was it. No anger, no raised voice. Just truth. She looked at me for a long moment. Then, something shifted. Not dramatic, not visible to everyone, but I saw it. The control was gone. Not can forever. But enough. She turned away first, not fast, not emotional, just done. She walked back toward the building. The same door. The same place. But not the same person. I stood there for a second, watching her go, not with anger, not with satisfaction, just understanding. Because this wasn't victory. It was the end of something, and the beginning of something else. My phone buzzed again. "Dana, where are you?" she asked. And I looked up at the sky. Dark now. Clear. "She doesn't control it anymore," I said. A pause. Then, "Good." I got back into the car. Started the engine. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't driving away from something. I was driving toward the truth. The room was quieter than usual. Not empty, just softer, like everything inside it already knew what was coming. I walked in slowly. No rush. No hesitation. Room 1-2B, same door, same light, but less time. You can feel that, in places like this, even before anyone says it. He was awake. Barely. Eyes half open. Breathing slower than yesterday. Each breath spaced just a little further apart. I closed the door behind me. Set my bag down. Pulled the chair closer. And sat. "I'm here," I said. Not loud, not soft, just enough. His eyes shifted toward me. It took effort. I could see it. Everything took effort now. "You came back," he said. "I told you I would." A small pause. Then, a faint smile. "You always do," he said. That hit something in my chest I didn't expect, because it sounded like he had always believed that. Even when he had no reason to. I reached for his hand. It felt different now. Lighter. Cooler, fragile in a way that wasn't there before. "I went to the church," I said. He didn't respond immediately, but I saw it, the way his eyes focused just a little more, listening. "I told them," I added. Another pause. "Good," he said, no surprise. No questions. Just acceptance. "They know the truth now," I said. He nodded slightly. That small movement costing him more than it should have. "You should have had that a long time ago," he said. I shook my head. "No," I replied. "I have it now." That was enough. That was the difference. The room settled again. Quiet. But not empty. I looked around for a second. At the machines. At the window. At the light coming in from outside. Then back at him. "I met your mom," I said. That brought a different kind of reaction. Not stronger. But deeper. "Margaret," he whispered. "She's been waiting," I said. A faint breath. Almost like a laugh. "She always does," he said. I smiled slightly. "Even without knowing her long. She kept everything," I added. The room. The presence. His eyes closed for a second. "Not from pain." "I told her not to," he said quietly. "I'm glad she didn't listen," I replied. That got a small breath out of him. Something close to a laugh. The silence returned again. But it didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt complete. "I missed a lot," he said after a moment. I didn't interrupt. "Birthdays, school, everything." I nodded slowly. I said, "That was the truth. On both sides." Another pause. "But you're here now," he said. "Yes. And that's enough," he added. I looked at him carefully. Because I needed to understand if he really meant that. He did. No regret in his voice. No bitterness. Just acceptance. "I need you to promise me something," he said. "Anything." He took a slow breath. It took longer this time. "Don't carry this forever," he said. I didn't answer right away. Because I knew what he meant. "Anger stays longer than people do," he added. That landed deep. "I'll try," I said. That was the only honest answer I had. He nodded slightly. "That's enough," he said again. We sat there for a while. Not talking, not moving much. Just being there. I noticed his breathing change, slower. The kind you don't mistake, not in this job. I leaned forward slightly. Held his hand a little tighter. "I'm here," I said again. His fingers moved. Barely, but enough. Then, he looked at me. Fully. For the first time since I walked in. Say it again. He said. I knew what he meant. There was a moment, just one, then, Dad. The word felt different this time, not unfamiliar, not new. Right. His eyes closed. Slowly. And then, nothing followed it. The machine beside him changed. A steady line. Flat. I didn't move, not right away. I kept holding his hand. Because that moment, it wasn't about loss. It was about something else. He didn't die alone. And for him, that mattered. For me, it mattered more. Donna came in quietly, checked, confirmed, wrote the time. She didn't say much, she didn't need to. I stayed. A little longer. Then I stood up, slowly. The room felt different now, empty, but not in a painful way. In a finished way. I picked up the small wooden box from the table, opened it. Inside, that same folded paper, Faith Marie Lawson. My heart walks outside my body. I closed it gently, and for the first time in my life, I understood exactly what that meant. 6 months later, I don't live in Dayton anymore. I moved. Not far, just enough. Closer to Wheeling, closer to Margaret, closer to something real. I still work in hospice, same job, same hours. But it feels different now, because now, when I sit beside someone in their final hours, I don't just understand loss. I understand truth. I visit Margaret every Sunday. We sit in that room she never chained, open the presents, one at a time, 32 years slowly, not rushing. Because we're not trying to catch up anymore. We're just living what's left. I kept the last name, Lawson. Not because I had to. Because it was always mine. My mother and I, we don't talk much. Not because I hate her. Because I finally see her clearly. And that takes time. My name is Faith Lawson. I'm a hospice nurse. And I was never abandoned.